This is macaroni and cheese from 1791. We think of it as the quintessential comfort food. But this dish is over 500 years old. Where did it come from? Who was making it? Let's dig into the origins of this comfort food. I love the history of macaroni and cheese. It goes back over 500 years. It shows up in 14th century Italian cookery, and it shows up in 14th century English cookbooks. That's very, very surprising. Let me try to read you this recipe. It's 14th century, so it's a little tough, but it says, take and make a thin foil of dough and curve it on pieces, and cast them on boiling water and steep it well. Take cheese and grate it, and butter cast thereupon, and above as lozenges or something like that, serve forth. It's probably something like cheese lasagna, but you get the idea. It's pasta and cheese together, and that's English cookery. When we get to the 18th century, macaroni itself, not just pasta, but macaroni shows up in English cookery. And usually it's used not as we would think of it as macaroni and cheese, but in things like macaroni soup, and sometimes in other dishes where they add a little bit to it as a spice of something special. But it starts to show up as macaroni and cheese in about 1769 in Raffles cookbook, and the recipe we'll be using is out of Fraser's cookbook, which is a little bit more Scottish, has a bit of a Scottish twist in it, and that's 1791. What happens when pasta gets, and macaroni specifically, gets to North America? And that's a great question. Jefferson is in Europe during the late 18th century. He's doing diplomatic work, and he's in France, and he gets introduced into pasta and macaroni specifically. He loves it. He wants to bring it home to America. So he brings home the recipes, and he even asks for a macaroni machine. Not just to make pasta, but to actually make tube macaroni. In fact, the way it's made, it probably even makes elbow macaroni, which is hilarious. He starts to cook this in North America. He even serves it at a state dinner. And one of the people writes in a letter later on, he didn't like it so much. It wasn't a big hit, at least for that guy at the state dinner. Macaroni and cheese, not so much. While macaroni and cheese wasn't a hit with Jefferson's guests, it does enter the American cuisine just a little bit later. 1824, Mary Randolph, in her Virginia Housewife Cookery book, she has macaroni and cheese. That's probably the point that it actually gets popular. Elizabeth Raffles' recipe in 1769 is a bit like we would expect macaroni and cheese, but I wanted something a little bit special. So this recipe from 1791 is maybe like restaurant macaroni and cheese. A dish of macaroni. Put 1/4 pound of macaroni in a muchkin of milk. Stir it on the fire close till the milk is reduced, and add to it 1/2 muchkin of cream. When the macaroni is soft, take it off. Grate 1/4 pound of cheese. Season your macaroni with a little white pepper and salt, and put puff paste border around the edges of your plate. Put pieces of butter on the bottom of the plate, then some spoonfuls of macaroni, then the grated cheese, then some butter. Repeat these layers until your ingredients are all in, taking care to have a good deal of cheese on the top with bits of butter overall. Bake it 1/2 hour in the oven. So this seems like a wonderful baked macaroni. It's got lots of butter, so it has to be good, right? First step, let's start boiling our macaroni in some milk. When I'm interpreting this recipe, it can sound like this macaroni gets boiled with the milk until it's reduced. I don't think that's what it actually means. It does say when the macaroni is soft, take it off. So it doesn't mean just keep going until the macaroni dissolves. We have to stop when it's at the proper consistency. It still has a little bit of tooth left. There's an interesting evolution of pasta that gets mentioned in the English cookery in the 18th century. It first starts off as vermicelli. Sometimes they're importing it. They're even talking about making vermicelli. And then macaroni seems to start to come into these recipes. And generally it's called something like small tube. They don't have all the fancy names of pasta that we do today. They just call it either vermicelli or just plain macaroni. But we can kind of see from how they talk about cooking it that it seems to be changing in its form. Now, when we see Jefferson's macaroni machine, we can see by the way it's constructed that the macaroni little tubes, as they're made, will come out and curve naturally. So that macaroni machine wouldn't make just straight tubes, it would make little curved tubes. Elbow macaroni, just like we would find in the store today. So why do we want different forms of pasta? Really good question. Each one has a different texture and a different way of holding the extra parts. There's always something extra with pasta, isn't it? At least there's butter, and we have cheese in this case, or different kinds of sauces, and each kind of shape is going to interact with those sauces in a different way. So these little tubes are going to be perfect for holding that cheese, making little pockets of flavor. When we're researching macaroni in the 18th century, it can be very confusing because the term is used for more than one thing. Sometimes it's talking about pasta, but actually more often it's talking about people, the way they talk and the fashion, what they're wearing. There are people that are macaronis, they're called macaronis, or they are part of the macaroni club. And it's not because they eat pasta, it's because of how they talk and what they're wearing. This is the perfect comfort food because we enjoy it today. We're going to be cooking a dish that's 200 years old, 225 years old, and they were making almost the same thing 300, 400, and 500 years ago. Doesn't that look amazing? It is gorgeous, and the smells are incredible. It came out of the oven and it's bubbling underneath, and you can just smell the flavors before you even try them. All that cheese, all that butter, a little bit of pepper in there. I can't wait to try this. What I'm expecting is this wonderful saltiness of the Parmesan cheese, along with the creaminess of the butter and the cream that this pasta was boiled in. So it should be a little softer and have a special flavor to it compared to just boiled in water. The crust should give us a little different texture and soak up some of those special flavors. Here it is, macaroni and cheese from 1791. That is perfect. The cheese is great, and the texture is wonderful. I was worried about that. So good. If you'd like another episode on comfort food, watch this one.